And welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. We are going to take a closer look at the Bills. We are joined by Matt Parrino, who works for our sister site, Syracuse.com, covers the Bills there. Also a member of the Shout podcast. I think I've actually been on the Shout podcast once or twice. It's a great listen if you want to learn more about the Buffalo Bills. Matt, thanks for joining us. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us today, Matt. And of course, the number one thing that we want to know, and I know that Browns fans want to know about, is Josh Allen. How is Josh doing? How is the elbow? And I've noticed that he's thrown 6 interceptions in his last 3 games, 2 in each game. So what's going on with Josh?
Yeah, it's a great place to start. We actually just talked to him a few hours ago, and I think the first thing is just the monitoring of this elbow injury. It's something that he admitted that it's going to be something that he's going to deal with probably for the next few weeks. He's trying to be smart in practice, so what they're doing is they'll go through reps, and he'll kind of be the quarterback until he actually has to throw it, apparently. And then Case Keenum will come in and throw it for him so he doesn't put any undue stress or pressure on that arm. And it's actually the reason why, on Sunday, he didn't come out for those early warm-ups. We always see him out there at 11:30 warming up, and it would kind of added to the intrigue. And he didn't come out, and he said it was just they didn't want to put any extra throws out there. He knew how much he needed to do to get ready to play. And so it's just going to be about managing over the next few weeks. And obviously we're going to get probably into the weather here in a minute, and that could be a good thing for the elbow if this has to be a run game. Maybe not so much against Nick Chubb and that Browns running game, but just from a health perspective. In terms of the turnovers, it's a lot of people are talking about regression over the last couple of weeks. And I just think it's more about him feeling like he has to do everything for them to win. And so Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator, he's talked a lot this week about playing smart, not conservative football. And there's that really strange balance there with knowing you have Josh Allen, knowing what he can do in the pass and the run game, and then trying to kind of bring him back to earth every once in a while and say, hey, you don't have to be super mad every moment. And in big, hyped game situations like in overtime this past weekend, sometimes it's hard to not trust that laser, that cannon of an arm that he has, but he's got to do it. And he had to check down to Devin Singletary, available to him on second down. He chose to push the ball down the field to try to get to Gabe Davis, and Patrick Peterson made him pay.
So Browns fans have seen this phenomenon this year where teams who are very pass-heavy, they're built around passing the football with good quarterbacks. The Dolphins just did it to them. The Chargers did it to them earlier this year. They actually came out and they ran right at the Browns because this run defense has been so shaky. Mm-hmm. Is that something you could see Buffalo doing? Is that something they would be willing to do to sort of go out of character? I know Ken Dorsey has run the ball a little more than Brian Daboll used to, but would they go out of character if they see that weakness in the Browns?
I mean, I think they might try. It's funny with this Bills team. It's like they had something really going against Minnesota, and going into that game, we talked a lot about that same thing. They struggled against the run. They had those 2 really good pass rushers on the outside, and teams have had success. I think at about 112 yards a game against the Vikings. And in the first half, it looked at that like that plan was working. Devin Singletary, I think he was averaging over 5 or 6 yards a carry. They had, even just with their backs, I think that they had run for 72 yards. And that's a big half for the Bills stable of running backs. And then in the second half, they went away from it. Ken Dorsey talked about they wanted their screen game where they were having some success, rightfully so. I mean, a couple plays to Isaiah McKenzie, Stephon Diggs, they worked. But they wanted that to serve as their running game. And then as they got closer down there, it's almost like, sometimes they get a little bit too in their own minds with the creativity piece of this thing, I feel like, from my perspective. And sometimes it's just easier to get 2 yards by running it right up the middle. And I think Devin Singletary can be that guy. Now, he fumbled in that game. And if you go back over the course of Devin Singletary's career, when he's kind of run into problems, it's been with ball security. And when that happens, I almost wonder, even if it's subconsciously, Sean McDermott, Ken Dorsey now in that offensive coordinator role, do they just kind of go away from trusting him in really big moments in the game? And so that could be a part of it too. But if you're talking about like a huge workload, 20 to 30 carries for the stable of backs, I don't ever see that happening unless you literally can't run. The Bills' best running back this season still has been Josh Allen.
And as Dan mentioned, if you're willing, we would love to get your pick on this game and just maybe a sentence or two on why you feel that way.
Yeah, so on Tuesdays I do pregame for the CBS affiliate out here, and so on Tuesdays the producer asked me for my pick, and I always keep it throughout the week because I don't want to do all the changes for my stories and everything else. I put it in for 45-24 Bills on Tuesday before really knowing the weather situation here. So I am going to kind of change things up here. I'm going to change it a little bit. I am going to go Bills 27. I'm going to go Browns 17. And the reason I think that that's going to be the final score and why I think the Bills are going to win by 10 points is I think this is a really aggravated offense, right? They've come out, they've scored points in recent weeks, but they're still having to answer all these questions about really bad decisions. I think Josh Allen's going to take care of the football in this game. I think they've game planned really well when they faced one really good pass rusher. Aaron Donald in week 1, Jeffrey Simmons a couple weeks later. And I think they'll have a game plan for Myles Garrett. Whether or not that works, we will see. But I think the Bills defensively, they're going to pose a lot of problems for this Browns team. But then again, if they could come in here and run the ball and it's a snowy game, throw everything out because who knows what's going to happen.
See, I make like 4 picks a week, and somehow I manage to get them all wrong. So I think you're, I think you're doing it right. Matt, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your work?
Over at Syracuse.com. We'll have all the coverage all week long there, and then obviously on the Shout Football podcast, we're live every Wednesday night, so 7:30 tonight. We will go into everything from a Bills perspective. You just search Bills. Matt Parrino is probably the best way to find it. Bring it to our channel, and we'll have another show Friday and then live after every game.
All right. Awesome. Matt, we appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.